He thought I was weak. He thought I was slow. He thought he could steal from me and walk away smiling. He was dead wrong. Todd Miller had me pegged as an easy mark, just another frail old woman with shaky hands and a soft heart. I told him I had $8,000 to my name, and I watched the greed flicker behind his eyes. He thought I was bluffing. Hell, he thought I was begging. He smiled that smug little grin of his, the kind of smile a predator gives right before the kill. So he waited for my daughter to step out of the room, waited for the shuffle of my slippers down the hall. Then, like the rat he was, he slipped into my bedroom, dirty fingers clawing through my drawers, ripping through my life. Bank books, cash, jewelry. He was sure it was all hidden right under his nose. But the only thing Todd Miller found that night was me. I stood in the doorway, cold and calm as ice. My voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Looking for something, Todd?" He froze, spun around, eyes wide, like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. His lips parted to spit out some pathetic excuse. I didn't give him the chance. I stepped forward, faster than he expected, and slammed the heavy wooden cane I always carried, not because I needed it, but because I wanted it, hard across his wrist. The sound of bone-meeting oak echoed in the room. He screamed, dropped the drawer he was holding, and stumbled back, clutching his hand. I raised the cane again, fury in every muscle. "You thought I was helpless," I growled. "You came into my house, touched my things, and thought you'd get away with it." He whimpered, backing toward the window like the spineless coward he was. "Get out," I snapped, "and if I ever see your filthy face near my family again, the next thing I break won't be your wrist." Todd Miller bolted, scrambling over himself to get away. The predator had become the prey, and that, right there, is how I taught him the hardest lesson of his miserable life. Some old women bite back. Hard. My name is Tara Simpson. I'm 66 years old, retired, and living alone in Riverside. It's a quiet life, the kind I earned. My husband, bless his soul, passed away far too young, and I raised our daughter, Sylvia, on my own. Those were hard years. I worked shifts at the local textile mill, round the clock, back-breaking labor that left my body worn out in ways that linger even now, like old ghosts in my joints. Even after I retired, I didn't just sit still. I scrubbed floors for others, took on odd mending jobs, did whatever it took to get by. Penny by penny, year by year, I clawed my way to a savings of $152,000. That money is my safety net, my silent, loyal companion. It's the one thing standing between me and the unpredictable messiness of old age. Sylvia has her own life now, her own little family, and I have no intention of ever being a burden to her. None. So, to me, that money isn't just a number in a bank account. It's my independence. It's my peace of mind. 3 years ago, my daughter Sylvia married Todd Miller. They settled down not far from me, in a pleasant enough development called Riverside Commons. The house was new, bought on a mortgage, and from what I could tell, the monthly payments were a heavy weight on their shoulders. Todd was charming. He always had a warm smile, always said the right things. Every time he came over, he'd bring little gifts, a flowering plant, a special kind of tea he knew I liked, sometimes more thoughtful than Sylvia herself ever managed. He treated me with a kind of sweetness that, even then, sometimes felt almost practiced. On weekends, he'd drop by. "Just checking in on you, Tara," he'd exclaim, and before I knew it, he'd be cleaning my windows or mopping the kitchen floor. If a light bulb burned out, or the faucet started that annoying drip, 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 one quick call, and he'd show up in minutes, tools in hand, still smiling like he genuinely enjoyed fixing things for his old mother-in-law. "Mom, isn't Todd wonderful?" Sylvia would ask, her voice pleased. "He's so good to you." Watching the two of them, Sylvia beaming at him, Todd laughing at her jokes, it warmed me all over, like a sunbeam cutting through a cold winter morning. Sure, sometimes his eagerness felt a little extra, a little too polished, but I told myself, "Tara, it's rare these days to see young people showing such respect for their elders. This is a good thing. Sylvia had married well, and as her mother, I was truly happy for her. When they were short on cash for groceries or a bill, I'd quietly slip Sylvia a little money. Not much, just enough to help out. But when it came to the bigger bucks, my $152,000, I never let my guard down. Not once. All I wanted was a quiet, secure retirement. My daughter happy, my savings intact. That was the plan. But over the past few months, something started to feel off. Todd was stopping by more often than usual, still smiling, still helpful, but his warmth had changed. There was something new beneath it, a subtle current I couldn't quite name but felt in my bones. He wasn't just popping in for chit-chat anymore. He'd drop little comments here and there, trying to sound casual. "Oh, my little pension covers groceries and bills just fine, Todd," I'd explain. "No leftover cash for investing or anything fancy like that, I'm afraid. And it's wonderful you're thinking about building something for your future, but business takes patience, dear. You've got to take it step by step. Can't just dive in head first without a very sturdy safety net of your own." I never once mentioned exactly how much I'd saved, always kept it fuzzy. Because here's the God's honest truth. You can't read hearts just by looking at faces. Even if he's my son-in-law, I've learned over 66 years to keep my cards pressed tight to my chest. Not because I'm petty, but because in this world, money turns people ugly faster than you'd believe. I had to protect what was mine, my quiet, loyal companion. Sylvia, bless her innocent heart, brought it up a couple of times, clearly prompted by Todd. "Mom," she began hesitantly one afternoon, avoiding my eye contact. "Todd's been feeling the pressure lately. You know, with his job and wanting to provide. He really wants to prove himself, build something on his own. That organic farm project he's been talking about with his brother Kevin, it actually sounds kind of promising, doesn't it?" I sighed, took her hand, and said gently, trying to make her understand without shattering her illusions too harshly. "Sylvia, sweetheart, starting a business isn't a game. It's not that I don't want to support you both, but this money, the little I have, this is my retirement. This is for doctors, for emergencies, for not ending up in some state-run home. If it all goes south with this farm idea, what do I do then? Have Todd get a steady, reliable job first. Let him save up a significant portion himself. When he's built up some capital of his own, shown some real commitment and understanding of risk, then we'll talk. If I can help in a small, sensible way, then I will." "Tara," he began, his voice a little too smooth, a little too slow. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you. Something important." I sat back in my chair, watching him carefully. I knew that tone. Something was coming, the real purpose of the evening. "Go ahead, Todd," I prompted. "What is it?" "Sylvia," he confided, leaning closer, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "Sylvia keeps telling me you've only got a little bit of money saved up for retirement. You know, just enough for the day-to-day. But I don't quite buy it, Tara. You've worked your whole life hard. There's no way you only have that little. Come on, can't you just be straight with me? For our peace of mind, really. How much do you really have saved?" He paused, then rushed to wave his hands as if he'd just said something terribly wrong. No, don't get me wrong," he protested. "I'm not trying to pry, really. I worry about you, Tara. You're all alone here. There are so many scams out there targeting seniors. And what if you're keeping your money somewhere unsafe, like under the mattress, or someone tricks you into handing it over? If you told me the exact number, maybe I could help you manage it better, you know? Make sure it's secure, working for you." His voice was full of supposed concern, but behind his eyes, I caught something sharper, something calculating. He was fishing, and not even bothering to hide the bait anymore. Sylvia reached out and tugged gently on his arm, a flush rising on her own cheeks. "Todd, honey," she murmured, "you've had a bit too much wine. Let's not—" "I'm fine, Syl," he insisted, shaking her off, his voice rising just enough to make the room feel tighter. "I'm just worried about Tara, that's all. This isn't drunk talk. This is important. Oh, this was rehearsed, all right. He'd waited for the wine to supposedly loosen my inhibitions, then went in for the ask. All right, Todd, I thought. You want to play? This old lady's got a few cards of her own. I let out a long, weary sigh, lacing my voice with just the right amount of hesitation, with a hint of wounded softness. I looked at him, managing a small, sad smile. Todd, I began softly, you're my son-in-law. That makes you practically my own son, and Sylvia is my only child. Since you asked, and you seem so genuinely concerned, I won't lie to you. I paused for effect, dropped my voice to a near whisper, and added a slight tremble to my words. I've scraped and saved my entire life, Todd, every spare penny, and all I've got to show for it, all that's left between me and the poorhouse, is about $8,000. Just $8,000. I raised a hand, showing 8 fingers, then let it drift down slowly, like a falling leaf. My gaze fell to the tablecloth, my tone turning quiet and dim. That's it, and I don't touch that money unless it's life or death. We older folks, we don't think about growing our money, Todd. We just think about surviving, about having a little peace of mind for the inevitable. As I spoke, I kept one eye on him, studying every twitch, every flicker of his expression. And when I said 8,000, it landed like a quiet bomb. His eyes froze for a split second, his pupils tightening. There it was, that tiny, almost imperceptible flash of raw disappointment. Sharp and unmistakable, like a ripple spreading across still water. He tried to cover it with a cough and a chuckle, but that beat of awkward, charged silence. I caught it. 8,000, he repeated, his voice suddenly a bit strained. Well, that's still something, Tara. That's not bad at all. You really ought to keep that safe. Like I said, lots of shady folks out there looking to take advantage. His voice had gone oddly flat, his manufactured warmth draining away like water down a sink. And just like that, the room felt a little colder, the charade over. The rest of dinner was strained. Todd grew quiet, barely touched his dessert, just pushed it around his plate like he was doing complicated math in his head, running the numbers, no doubt, and realizing how pitifully short $8,000 would fall for his grand organic farm. Afterward, he mumbled something about his phone battery dying and asked if he could charge it in my bedroom for a few minutes. Sylvia was in the kitchen, insisting on doing the dishes, despite my protests. That left me alone in the living room, the TV humming softly in the background with some late-night talk show, its canned laughter grating on my nerves. Todd slipped into the bedroom, the door almost, but not quite, closing behind him, leaving just a narrow crack. Something in me stiffened. A sharp little instinct, old but never dull, tapped at the back of my mind. Something's not right. I set down the remote, stood up as quietly as my old knees would allow, and tiptoed toward the bedroom. No creaking floorboards, no sudden moves. I held my breath and leaned just close enough to hear through the crack. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but in the quiet house I caught it. He was on the phone. When the charm offensive, even doubled, didn't work, Todd pivoted. He stopped coming at me directly with Kevin in tow. Instead, he started working his way in through the one person he knew I couldn't easily shut out, Sylvia. It was the slow boil strategy. Whispered doubts into her ear at night, guilt trips served soft and steady as a leaky faucet, playing on her love and loyalty. I could almost hear his voice, dripping poison into her mind. Babe, I imagined him saying, I'm under so much pressure at work. I can't keep doing this dead-end job forever. There's no future in it, no security for us, for our family. I need to build something of my own, something for us. I don't have the capital to get started. You know, my buddy Daniel from college, his father-in-law invested in his food truck business, just a small loan. Now the guy is absolutely killing it, making a fortune. I'm not asking for much from your mom, Sil, just a little faith. She has that money just sitting there. She could help. Why won't she? I'm your husband. Doesn't that make me family too? Doesn't she want to see us succeed? That kind of talk, spoon-fed in soft tones, framed by tired eyes and worried sighs, seeped into Sylvia like warm water around a frog. Not loud, not forceful, just persistent, relentless. And Sylvia, my sweet, loyal girl, she's got the softest heart I know. She believed in him. She still wanted to believe in him. She saw him as hard-working, ambitious, a man trying to build something better for their future. Little by little, Todd drew her deeper into his web of manipulation. She started visiting me more often again, alone this time. Always helpful, always kind, asking if I needed anything. But something in her eyes had changed. There was a weight behind her glances, a hesitance in her usually bright chatter, something she couldn't quite bring herself to say aloud. Until the day she finally did. She'd just finished helping me trim some vegetables for a stew, still wearing an apron, sitting on one of my kitchen stools, with her hands nervously twisting the fabric hem. "Mom," she began, her voice small and hesitant. "Yes, sweetheart," I answered gently, though my gut already knew with a sinking feeling where this was headed. Todd's been under a lot of stress lately," she explained. "You know, with everything. And his brother's project, the farm. It actually does sound kind of promising when you hear all the details." She looked up at me, her eyes darting away almost instantly, like she couldn't bear to meet mine. "I was just thinking, you know, that $8,000 you mentioned, could you maybe lend them a little, just to help them get started? Todd said it would only be temporary. As soon as they turn a profit, he'll pay you back right away. He even promised interest, a good rate." "Sylvia," I began softly, locking eyes with her, "it's not that I don't want to help you and Todd. You know I'd do anything for you. But you have to understand, that money, that small amount I have, it's my safety net. It's truly all I've got between me and disaster if my health fails." I paused, letting the silence weigh down the moment, then continued, my voice firm but not cold. "Business, any business, is never a sure thing, sweetheart. No matter how promising it sounds. What if this project fails? What if, despite all their best intentions, that money disappears? What happens to me then? Who's going to cover my bills, my medical expenses, my future? You and Todd? Can you honestly, truly afford to take on that kind of responsibility right now?" She went still. My words, gentle as they were, had landed. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She knew the answer. Of course she did. They were struggling with their own mortgage. They could barely handle their own finances, let alone take on the full living expenses of another human being, especially an aging one. "Mom," she murmured, her voice catching in her throat, "I know it hasn't been easy for you. I just want to help Todd. That's all. He's so stressed." That hit her. She looked up at me, stunned, her eyes wide, like I'd just slapped her with a truth she didn't want to hear but couldn't entirely ignore. "Mom," she stammered, her voice trembling slightly, "how could you say that about Todd? He's not like that. He wouldn't—" "Are you sure, Sylvia?" I asked, holding her gaze, my own steady and sad. "Are you absolutely sure? Think about how he's been acting lately. The way he asks, the timing of his requests, the pressure he's putting on you and through you on me. You really haven't noticed anything off? Anything that doesn't quite sit right with you?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. My daughter, my baby, the center of my world, and now the very thing that was tearing me apart inside. She thought she was protecting love, fostering a dream, but she didn't see, or didn't want to see, how Todd had expertly used her affection, her loyalty, turning her into his messenger, his emotional battering ram, the final key he hoped would unlock my defenses. When she finally stood up, her eyes red and shining with unshed tears, the air between us was thick with unspoken words, with heat and hurt. She left without looking back, walking faster than usual, the click of her heels on my linoleum floor echoing her distress. She was angry, I knew. And worse, she was wounded. I didn't follow her. I knew the wall rising between us, brick by bitter brick, wasn't entirely of her making. It was Todd's construction. And now that his path through Sylvia had seemingly failed, and my $8,000 seemed more real and more stubbornly inaccessible than ever, he went quiet again. The visits slowed to a trickle. The smiles, when they happened, were brittle. But I didn't feel relief. I knew him. All men like him. They don't quit, they regroup. He was waiting, planning, watching for another crack in the armor. So I made a decision. If he was waiting to make his next move, then maybe it was time I made mine first. I went to the library and used their computer to mock up a fake investment brochure. Nothing fancy, just a single typed page. Riverside Community Organic Garden Partnership Program. Right at the top, in bold red pen, I'd circled a keyline. Minimum initial investment, $2,000. Projected annual return, 8 to 10%. Conservative estimate. I placed it strategically under the table lamp in the center of my small dining table, in the exact spot where the afternoon sunlight hit the polished wood just right, making it impossible to miss. Then I moved to the kitchen and started fussing with a bowl of fruit, humming a little tune, just as I heard Todd's car pull up. Sylvia was at work. He was stopping by, he'd said, to drop off a library book I'd lent Sylvia. I'd also taken out my old, slightly battered smartphone. The screen was cracked in one corner, the battery life was terrible, but the camera and microphone still worked well enough. Earlier, I'd found a small, flexible tripod, the kind you can wrap around things. I'd carefully positioned the phone inside a slightly dusty, overgrown fern on a bookshelf in the living room, the lens peeking out between two fronds. It had a clear view of the dining area and the main walkway into the bedroom hall. I'd hit record just before he knocked. "Oh, honey," I responded, picking up my teacup, smiling faintly as I blew across the surface. "That's kind of you to offer. But sometimes when it is family, well, sometimes that's when the knife, if it comes, goes in a little deeper. That's what makes it sting the most. Just a thought." He blinked, just for a moment, and the smile faltered, a flash of unease in his eyes before he quickly papered it over. "Tara," he chuckled, forcing it, "you're hilarious. Such a kidder." "These days, Todd," I sipped my tea calmly. "Even blood brothers keep their accounts straight with signed papers and lawyers. So, a son-in-law wanting to manage his mother-in-law's nest egg. Well, I think you see my point. One has to be careful." He didn't answer, just stared at the fruit bowl on the counter, his mind clearly running 100 miles a minute. And sure enough, the very next day, his brother Kevin showed up at my door, unannounced. His smile was brighter than usual, too bright, and he didn't even wait for his coat to come off before launching in. "Aunt Tara," he beamed, practically bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Todd told me you're looking into a community farm investment too. That's amazing. We're practically in the same space. Great minds think alike, eh?" "Well, hello, Kevin." I raised an eyebrow, my lips curling at the edges, but I played it warm. "You two boys are starting to finish each other's sentences. What a surprise visit." "That's called great brotherhood, Aunt Tara," he grinned, clapping an imaginary Todd on the back. "Synergy. And hey, family should look out for each other, right? That's what we were thinking. Since you're already in the mindset of investing a couple of $1,000, maybe you'd consider putting that investment into our project instead. We could make an exception on our usual minimum for family. Say $5,000, for a stake that could really grow." "Oh, Kevin," I offered a long, practiced sigh of deliberation. "You boys know my situation. I only have 8,000 total. 5,000 is... well, that's most of it." "Exactly," he beamed, undeterred. "Start with 5. Just try it. Once it pays off, and it will pay off big, you can always add more later. Think of it as a family venture." I gave them a polite, non-committal smile. No agreement, no outright refusal, just silence. But in my heart, I knew. They'd bitten. Hard. The little fish were nibbling at the hook, now, to see if the bigger one would make a mistake. One Tuesday afternoon, Sylvia came over. Todd was supposedly at a business meeting that would run late. She seemed particularly agitated. We were in the living room. I was pretending to read. She was pacing. "Mom," she began, wringing her hands. "Todd is just so stressed. This farm thing, he really believes in it. And Kevin found a new piece of equipment they absolutely need, but it's only available for a short time at a discount. If they could just get that 5,000. "Sylvia," I responded, lowering my book, looking at her sadly. "We've been over this. That 8,000 is all I have, risking more than half of it." "But Mom," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "He said if you could just show some faith. He feels like you don't trust him, like you don't believe in him. It's tearing him apart. It's tearing us apart." I heard Sylvia sigh heavily in the living room. Then a few moments of silence. Then quiet footsteps, not Sylvia's, heavier, stealthier. My breath caught. Through the tiniest crack of my bedroom door, which I'd left artfully ajar, I saw Todd. He hadn't been at a business meeting at all. He must have been waiting outside, or come in silently while Sylvia was distracting me. He moved like a shadow, straight to my dresser. My old mahogany dresser, where I kept my linens and a few sentimental trinkets. He thought I was old. He thought I was naive. He thought Sylvia's distress, his constant pressure, my talk of a measly $2,000 investment, had made me vulnerable, perhaps even made me move my vast hidden fortune. He was looking for cash, for bank books, for anything that screamed money. He pulled open drawers with rough, urgent movements. First the top one, rummaging through scarves and old letters. Then the second, full of neatly folded nightgowns. His frustration was mounting. He was not being gentle. He pulled open the third drawer, the deep one where I kept spare blankets. Empty. Then the bottom drawer, also empty, save for a single neatly folded piece of paper. He snatched the paper. He unfolded it. He stared at it, his face going from greedy anticipation to confusion, then to a sudden, stark, ashen fear. He didn't find stacks of cash. He didn't find gold bars or stock certificates. All he found in that drawer was a note, a simple, typed note. It read, "Todd, looking for something. Did you really think it would be this easy? I see you. I've been seeing you. And I'm always prepared. Tara." His hands began to shake. He looked around the room wildly, his eyes wide with panic, like a cornered animal. He suddenly seemed to realize he's been played, that he's walked right into a trap. I stepped out of the hallway, calm as you please. "Lose something, Todd?" I inquired, my voice even, but carrying the weight of a collapsing building. "Or perhaps looking for something that isn't yours." He spun around, the note still clutched in his hand, his face a mask of guilt and terror. Sylvia, hearing my voice, rushed in from the living room, stopping dead in her tracks at the sight of Todd in my bedroom, the open drawers, the look on his face. "Todd," she whispered, horrified. What are you doing?" Todd couldn't speak. He just stared at me, then at Sylvia, then back at the note in his hand. The great charmer, the master manipulator, was utterly, hopelessly trapped. The hook was set. The camera in the fern had caught it all. His illegal entry, his frantic search, his face when he read my note. Oh yes, I was prepared. And this was just the beginning of his lesson. The incident with the drawers was a turning point. They knew I was onto them, at least partially. But their greed, it seemed, was a powerful motivator, stronger even than caution. They didn't disappear. Instead, they became more insidious, their visits less frequent but more focused. Kevin would sometimes call, his voice oozing fake concern. "Aunt Tara," he'd croon over the phone, "just calling to see how you are. Todd told me you weren't feeling too well the other day. We're still thinking about you, you know. That little nest egg of yours. We just want to make sure you're making the wisest decisions." I kept my old phone, the one with the cracked screen, charged and ready. I'd tuck it into my apron pocket, or leave it discreetly on a side table, the voice memo app running silently whenever Todd or Kevin, or both, were near. It was grainy, yes. The audio wasn't studio quality, but it would pick up a conversation, a whispered aside, the true venom beneath the sugary words. And sometimes, that's all you need. It was time to stop just defending and start actively gathering. For the next few weeks, I lived as if that drawer incident was just a strange blip. I cooked, I cleaned, I took my walks, I fed the sparrows in my little garden patch like I always did. But I was listening. And my little phone was listening too. I could hear Kevin's hushed voice, sharp and clear on the recording later. "So the direct approach isn't working," he hissed. "She's tougher than she looks, that old bat. And that note in the drawer, she's playing games." Todd's voice, lower, more frustrated, replied, I know. But that $8,000, even that would be something. Sylvia's still soft on her. We need to get Sylvia to go back again. Make her really sell the stress, the desperation. She'll cave to Sylvia eventually if she thinks her daughter's marriage is on the line. The old lady panics easy when it comes to family drama. "And if she gives Sylvia the cash," Kevin pressed, "you make sure Sylvia hands it right over. No delays. We move it into a new account, my name on it too, just in case. We have to move fast before she changes her mind or talks to someone." Then his voice dropped further, laced with a chilling sort of pragmatism that made my blood run cold when I listened back. "Honestly, Todd, it would be a lot simpler if she just wasn't around anymore. She's old. Things happen. Sylvia inherits everything then, right? No fuss, no convincing needed. Just a thought. Nature taking its course." A short, nervous laugh from Todd followed. "Don't even joke like that, Kev," he muttered, but there was no real condemnation in his tone, just a weak discomfort. "Who's joking?" Kevin retorted smoothly. "Just being realistic. The older they get, the more they're afraid of confrontation, of being alone, of being a burden. Makes them suggestible. Or, prone to accidents. We just need to be patient, or find a way to speed things up a little if you catch my drift. That farm isn't going to fund itself." My breath hitched as I listened to the recording later that night, alone in my quiet living room. The casual cruelty, the cold calculation in Kevin's voice, Todd's weak acquiescence. It was far worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about tricking an old woman out of her savings anymore. This had taken a darker, more sinister turn. The hair on my arm stood on end. They weren't just greedy, they were dangerous, and they saw me not as family, not even as a person, but as an obstacle. An obstacle that, in their minds, might be better off. Removed. That night, I slept with my bedroom door locked for the first time in years. My heart ached for her, for the pain he was inflicting. "Sylvia," I began gently, "this isn't about hate. This is about protecting what little I have, and protecting you from a bad investment." "But it's not just an investment anymore, Mom," she cried, tears finally spilling over. "It's our life. He's talking about leaving. He says he can't live like this, feeling like a failure, unsupported by the one person who could make a difference." He was threatening to leave her, using the ultimate emotional weapon. I looked at my daughter, her face streaked with tears, her shoulders slumped in despair, and I knew I couldn't let this go on. She deserved to know at least a sliver of the truth, enough to plant a seed of doubt, enough to make her question the man she had married. "Sylvia," I said, my voice firm but kind, "there's something you need to hear, something I recorded. It's about Todd and Kevin." Her eyes widened. "Recorded? What are you talking about?" I took out my old phone, found the clip from the kitchen, the one where they discussed manipulating her, and the chilling lines about me being better off not around. I hesitated for a split second, then pressed play, keeping the volume low, just for her, as Todd's and Kevin's voices filled the quiet room, discussing her as a pawn, her mother as an obstacle. Sylvia's face went from confusion to disbelief, then to a dawning, horrified understanding. When the part about me not being around anymore played, a choked sob escaped her lips. She stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, he wouldn't. They wouldn't." I stopped the recording. "I didn't want to show you this, sweetheart," I confessed, my own voice thick with emotion. "I didn't want to hurt you. But you need to know who you're dealing with. This isn't just about money, Sylvia. It's about what kind of men they truly are. She sat there, stunned into silence, the color drained from her face. The carefully constructed image of her loving, stressed husband was crumbling before her eyes, replaced by something ugly and calculating. The tears flowed freely now, not just of sorrow, but of betrayal. The dam of her denial had finally cracked. She didn't say anything more. She just picked up her purse, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, and walked out the door, leaving me with the heavy weight of what I had just unleashed. I didn't know if she'd confront Todd or if she'd retreat further into denial. But the seed was planted, and I knew, with a grim certainty, that the next storm was brewing fast. 3 days later, Sylvia called me. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Mom," she stated, "Todd and Kevin are coming over to your place this afternoon. They said they have a final proposal for you. I told them I'd be there too." "Are you sure you want to do this, Sylvia?" I asked gently. "I need to," she replied, a new steely note in her voice I hadn't heard before. "I need to see this through, for myself." When Todd and Kevin arrived, they were all smiles and false bonhomie. Kevin even had a small, cheap-looking bouquet of flowers. "For the lovely Aunt Tara," he chirped, thrusting them at me. Todd stood beside him, a practiced look of earnest sincerity on his face. Sylvia sat on the edge of my armchair, pale but composed, her eyes fixed on them. I didn't invite them to sit. I remained standing. "So," I began, my voice calm and level, "you have a final proposal?" Todd stepped forward. "Tara, we've thought long and hard about this," he started, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "We understand your concerns, so we've scaled back our request. Just that $5,000 you were considering for the other project. As a loan, we'll sign a promissory note, pay you back with generous interest within a year. This is our last chance to make the farm work. For us. For Sylvia." He glanced at Sylvia, a look of pleading in his eyes. Kevin chimed in. "It's a gesture of family trust, Aunt Tara. We just need you to believe in us, just this once." I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I walked over to my side table and picked up my old phone. "Before we talk about promissory notes," I announced, "I have something I'd like you all to hear, especially you, Sylvia." Todd and Kevin exchanged a quick, uneasy glance. Sylvia tensed. I pressed play. Not the clip about manipulating Sylvia this time. I played the full, unedited recording from the kitchen, their hushed whispers about me being an old bat, their plans to use Sylvia's emotions, Kevin's chilling, "It would be a lot simpler if she just wasn't around anymore," and Todd's weak, non-committal response. Then I played another snippet, one from a different day, where Kevin joked about how easy old people are to fool because they're scared of conflict and loneliness. As their own voices filled the room, raw and unfiltered, the blood drained from Todd's face. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Kevin's jovial mask slipped, revealing a flicker of panic, then a sneer. Sylvia stared at Todd, her face a mixture of horror and utter revulsion. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was deafening. "So," I broke the silence, my voice like ice, "that's your idea of family trust, is it? Waiting for me to die so you can get your hands on Sylvia's inheritance? Or perhaps, as Kevin so charmingly put it, finding a way to speed things up?" Kevin scoffed, trying to regain his composure. That was just talk, Aunt Tara. Locker room banter. You're taking it all out of context," he blustered. "Out of context?" I retorted, my gaze unwavering. "Planning to defraud my daughter, speculating on my death. Is that your idea of a joke, Kevin?" Todd finally found his voice, a desperate, trembling whisper. "Tara, Sylvia, it wasn't like that. Kevin was just... He gets carried away." But Sylvia stood up, her eyes blazing with a cold fury I'd never seen in her before. She walked slowly towards Todd, stopping right in front of him. "Wasn't like that, Todd," she whispered, her voice dangerously quiet. "I heard you. I heard every word. You let him talk about my mother dying. You plotted to use me. All this time, all your stress, your ambition, it was all a lie, wasn't it? Sylvia, baby, please, Todd began, reaching for her. Don't touch me. She recoiled as if burned. Her voice rose, filled with the pain of his betrayal. You disgust me. Both of you. She turned to Kevin. And you are a monster. Now hold on a minute, little lady. Kevin started, taking a step towards her. Get out, I commanded, my voice ringing with an authority they couldn't ignore. Both of you, get out of my house. And if either of you ever come near me or my daughter again, these recordings, and several others I have, will go straight to the police, along with a restraining order. Do I make myself clear? Kevin's face was a mask of fury, but he saw the steel in my eyes, the evidence in my hand. He knew he was beaten. He grabbed Todd's arm. Come on, Todd, he snarled. This crazy old bitch isn't worth it. He practically dragged a stunned, broken Todd out the door, slamming it behind them. I had protected my daughter, I had protected my savings, and most importantly, I had protected my peace. Todd Miller had come looking for money, hoping to find a vulnerable old woman. Instead, he found someone who was prepared, someone who was stronger than he could ever imagine. And in the end, that was the only treasure that truly mattered. My resilience, my quiet, unyielding strength, and that no con man could ever take away.